was thinking about the other day.
Who?
Magpie.
The criminal?
Do we know another Magpie? Whatever happened to her?
She died.
No. Are you sure?
Reasonably.
Why is it the good villains never die?
Clark, what the hell are good villains?
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles Podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and welcoming back a returning guest. And today we'll be talking about Superman Batman, Public Enemies, 2009 animated film. And the returning guest is Sai Islam. Sai, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay. Doing all right. Got a lot of flu going around my house, so luckily got my kids to bed and can join you tonight. So looking forward to talking about Superman Batman, which I rewatched today. So fresh in my mind.
Yeah, sorry to hear about that. Yeah, we've got the flu spreading around our area here too, though. Fortunately, no one in the house has caught it yet. But now that my university is just about to go on winter break, this is probably the time when I'm going to catch it.
Oh yeah, that's that's always the way. My kids are young. My son's 5 and my daughter's like 20 months. So they're just petri dishes, bringing back everything. And this particular flu strain has been particularly bad. So they've been having a rough time of it. But luckily they're sleeping now. Hopefully the morning goes well. We'll see how it goes from there,
Yeah, mine is my son is 3.5 and my daughter is going to be 5 in a few weeks. So yeah, so they're both in preschool. So yeah, the petri dish thing. Worst experience of my life so far. Hand, foot, and mouth disease.
Oh gosh, wow.
Yeah. They caught that. It was mild for them, but it jumped over to me. And for me, it was terrible. Like I was bedridden for a week. I couldn't move, couldn't touch anything. It was awful.
Yeah. When I catch the flu from them now, it's worse for me than it is for them. So, and if anybody here is like really thinking about parenting, we're selling it hard right now.
I know, right? That's what I always tell people. I'm like, you know what? Diapers, midnight feedings, those don't bother me. It's all the mutant diseases they bring back from preschool. That's what kills me.
Yep, that's the tough part,
Yeah. All right. But before we jump into the movie, why don't you remind people about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Dr. Sai Islam. I wear a couple of different hats. I'm an associate professor of psychology, specifically industrial organizational psychology at Farmingdale State College, basically psychology of work. I also have a consulting practice called Talent Metrics Consulting, where I'm the vice president of consulting with them. And we do kind of outsource people analytics, some training and development work, some organizational development work. And I'm also the author of 2 pop culture leadership books. One called Leaders Assemble, Leadership in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and another called The Elements of Leadership, Leadership Lessons from Avatar: The Last Airbender. So if you're interested in those, go check them out. They're available wherever books are sold, and there are other books in that series that you might be interested in if you're interested in nerdy stuff and leadership.
Very cool. Very cool. And another thing we like to do when we're bringing people on is talking about what's grabbing your interest these days. Anything that's tickling your fancy?
Sure. So we were talking about my kids earlier. My son has been binge watching Bat Fam. I don't know if you've seen Bat Fam yet.
Not yet, but that's on my list. I saw someone mention that on Reddit and made me curious to show it to my kids.
It's a very cute show, and it's a really nice adaptation of Batman, where there's a middle-aged Batman kind of raising his son. He's got a kind of a found family, and my son really likes it. He's a little young for it. It's meant for age 7+, but it's very benign. It's very silly. If you know the DC comics, it's very funny. Like Ra's al Ghul lives in the house with Bruce Wayne and Alfred. And Man-Bat lives there as well. And it's just like a really goofy kind of like, imagine Batman if he was living in like a Full House. And, Damian's really fun. The characters are really good. And I realized that I like Bat Dad. I really love the found family aspect of the character. And they really lean into that. They lean into a lot of like the established villains having children as well. So there are characters that are new that show up there, but he still faces off against the same villains like Clayface and Killer Croc. The Joker shows up. And if you want a taste of this this universe, this world, there's a Christmas movie actually called Merry Little Batman that kind of was what came out before the series, and I really like that. My son hasn't seen that yet, but I think he will, and it's a very sweet show. And it's just a lot of fun. There's a lot to appeal for like parents. There's a lot to appeal for kids, and there's some good lessons for Batman to kind of like learn, and also for Damian to learn. So I really had a fun time with that. I also really love the idea of Batman being like an overprotective father, which kind of makes sense because he's he lost his family, and now he's just like protecting people, so he's gonna be extra protective with his own kids and with his extended family. So it's a very sweet show. um and I've been reading Absolute Batman, Absolute Superman. I would recommend the Absolute Universe just in general. The stories are really good. This movie that we're going to talk about tonight actually reminds me of DCKO. I don't know if you've kept up with the DCKO series.
I haven't checked that out yet, but I'm mostly a trade guy these days.
Sure.
But
Okay.
the absolute stuff I've been getting, the Batman and Superman I've been getting regularly. But
Yeah.
the other stuff I pretty much only trades. But that is something I'm looking forward to checking out, though.
Yeah, DCKO actually has a very specific fight that I'll mention when we talk about Superman Batman Public Enemies. That's like but like a big part has actually grown into a bigger part of the DC universe since the 21st century. And I think that's a lot of fun. Other stuff, since I've been on a dad kick, I've been reading Roy Wood Jr.'s The Man of Many Fathers, which is a very really good book, really good memoir. Um, and my wife and I watched The Naked Gun last night, which was very funny. So if you're interested in reliving 80s and 90s like slapstick comedy, it's a pretty good version of that.
Yeah, I've been wanting to check that out. Like as soon as I saw that trailer, the trailer was just brilliant. And so as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I've got to see this movie. Just like I
Oh,
love the idea of Liam Neeson doing his, hardcore, old man badass thing, but in a satirical side of. So it just looks
yeah,
like it looked really good, and I'm looking forward to checking it out.
yeah.
But for my part, actually, in on the kid front, my son has been getting into Bat Wheels lately. He's
Oh yeah.
stumbled on that on Netflix, and he loves cars. He's just starting to get into Batman now, so this is like the perfect thing for him. He's got like two little toy, like Hot Wheels makes like a bunch of different like replica Batmobiles,
Mhm.
and they sell them here. They sell them in the States too. So we picked
Mhm.
up two of them. The only two they had at the time was they had the Batman 66 one and the Batman and
Mhm.
Robin one, but.
Oh yeah.
At other points we've seen like the other ones I've seen them. They have the Arkham one, they've got
Mhm.
the 89 one. I think they've got the Forever one and the animated
Mhm.
series one. So I'm planning on getting them all for him eventually. It's just like once they
Oh,
come back
cool.
into stock. But yeah, he loves cars. He loves sleeping with the Batman cars lately. And
Right.
so when he found out there's a TV show on Netflix that's
Mhm.
called Bat Wheels, just all about Batman and the villains and the Bat family cars, just like all going on adventures together, he was
Mhm.
hooked. That was it. So he's loving
Oh,
that.
that's great. Yeah, my son used to watch Bat Wheels, and it has a really good Batman performance from Ethan Hawke. Just like Bat Fam has like a very good Batman performance from Luke Wilson. So it's actually kind of funny to see all these different voice actors doing a relatively good family-oriented Batman character, which is fun.
Yeah. And it's funny you talked about the absolute stuff. The episode we just recorded today as well, which is another animated episode.
Mhm.
Listeners, you would have heard that last week when Will Short was on. We talked about the absolute books there as well. And yeah, really digging those. Absolute Batman. I just read the first issue of the Joker story arc, and so that's really cool. I'm really like just liking how creative they're getting with the absolute stuff. It's just been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Other stuff
absolutely.
though is I just started reading last night. I haven't finished it, but I just started reading the crossover between Mark Waid's World's Finest and Justice League Unlimited. So it's We Are Yesterday, I think it's called. And so I'm just
Mhm.
about like I'm just like two issues into that, but so far I'm really liking what I've read of that. So
Oh, very cool.
And most of the other stuff I've just been doing has just been pretty much all for podcasting or for stuff I'm covering in my classes. So
Mhm.
now that the holidays are coming up, hopefully I'm gonna have a little
Mhm.
bit of time because Christmas here is it's not a national holiday, so my wife has to
Mhm.
work. So that means she said, "Well, let's just keep the kids in preschool." I said, "Okay, fine." So
Mhm.
I've got Christmas week basically to myself to just kind of
Oh wow.
relax a little
Okay.
bit before we start
Uh,
the holiday stuff on the weekend.
yeah, I'm in the middle of finishing grading my finals and submitting final grades. So all that stuff will be done by the end of the week, and then I'm vegging out for Christmas, you know?
Nice. Nice. Okay, so today we are talking about Superman Batman Public Enemies. This was an animated film based on the first arc of the Jeph Loeb, Ed McGuinness Superman Batman comic book. Also featured the downfall of Lex Luthor as president, which was longstanding thing that happened in the comic books when Jeph Loeb took over. And that era of the Superman books, I was on my buddy Anthony Desiato's Digging for Kryptonite podcast recently, and he was doing a deep dive series into the Loeb Kelly era, and I went on to talk about the Our Worlds at War crossover, which I loved a lot. I thought that was really cool. Going back and
Mhm.
revisiting was a lot of fun. If nobody knows what I'm talking about, go look up Digging for Kryptonite. Go look up those episodes. The entire run he did, just diving into the different aspects of the Loeb Kelly run was great, but I was particularly on the Worlds at War one and just had a lot of fun diving back into that. And it got me interested in going back to reading this story, which I have not done yet, but when you said you were interested in coming back on the show and you gave me a list of things you're interested in, I'm like, okay, Superman Batman, this is a good time to dive back into this because
Mhm.
it's still fresh in my mind after hearing Anthony talk about it. So I want to kind of revisit
Mhm.
this. And this was during this time when DC was doing something which I wish they were still doing, where they were adapting these storylines from the comic books, not in terms of any sort of continuity or anything, but they were trying to match the art style of the comics as well as just doing a fairly faithful adaptation of it as best as they
Mhm.
could because they obviously had to smooth stuff over for continuity reasons and to make it
Sure.
more accessible. But so they had like Superman, Batman, Public Enemies. They did the New Frontier. The sequel to this one, Superman, Batman, Apocalypse, which then they tried to adapt the Michael Turner style since he was the artist on those. Um, and All Star Superman, they did it. They couldn't really get the Quitely style, but they tried to approximate something similar to it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was my personal favorite was The Dark Knight Returns, which they rendered
Mhm.
it in the Frank Miller style. And I maintain honestly, I think I might like that animated movie better than the actual comic.
Oh wow. That bold words, I gotta say.
Bold words, yes, I will say because
Yeah.
there are two main reasons. First off, I think Frank Miller's narration over time it doesn't hold up as well as it did the first time I read it.
Uh-huh.
The other thing too is and also just hearing Peter Weller deliver those lines is really
Mhm.
cool. But
Yeah.
also just the one of the things that always annoys me about people who talk about the Dark Knight Returns is they talk about how Batman killed someone in that. It's like, well, no, he didn't. But the artwork
Mhm.
is muddled, so it's not clear.
Mhm.
And it's when he's going after this mutant, the one of the mutants has this hostage, this little boy has a gun on him and says, I'll do it, I'll shoot him. And then it cuts to Batman shooting the gun, like a close-up of the gun. And then the next panel is like the person, their mouth is open, there's a bullet hole on the wall behind them. And then the next panel is Batman catching the kid, and he just says, I believe you. A lot of people have said that, he killed that guy. But he didn't because there's never any mention of murder
Mhm.
in any of the charges. When he goes after the Joker, he's still making this big
Mhm.
thing about this is the one line I haven't crossed yet, but I am probably going to cross it tonight. Um, and then but this movie, what it does is it makes it very clear. No, he did not kill that person. So it clears up
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
misconception and makes it
Mhm.
very clear. So those two reasons are why I really love it and why it really kind of stands out to me in terms
Mhm.
it more than the actual comic does these days.
Did you talk about that on the show? Because it's two parts, right? I haven't seen it, but the Dark Knight
Yeah, it's
Returns
two
is part one,
parts.
part two. Okay.
Yeah, we covered it a while back. I think with Stacey Dukes, we covered that several
Okay.
years ago.
Mhm. Wow. And I do like Peter Weller as a Batman voice. There's a lot of
Hmm.
good Batman voice actors.
Yeah.
Though we're about to talk about the best, but there are a lot of pretty good ones.
That's right. Well, let's first talk about this. Have you read that original Superman Batman comic book?
A long time ago. We're I must be a decade since I've read it. At least. And so I have vague memories of it. I'm not a big Jeph Loeb fan. I like some of his work. I think his DC work is a little bit better than some of his Marvel stuff, except for like the color, the Incredible Hulk gray and Daredevil yellow and things like that. I think are very good, but I think his DC output is probably a little bit better. I think Superman Batman, my recollection of it is that I liked it, and I just enjoyed the way that he wrote that particular pairing. And I think he did a good job. I think you see this in the movie too. He does a good job of capturing their personalities and their relationship very well.
Yeah, one of the and I second you on Loeb. His it's I hate to bring this up, but one of the things that I think really kind of happened and really kind of changed his writing style was the death of his son, because after that his stuff became a lot less accessible to me is
Mm,
probably like the nicest way I can put it without, and I totally, I don't want to shit on the guy or anything like that because I can't even imagine having to go through that tragedy, but
yeah,
um
yeah.
I've noticed a definite shift in his style
Mm,
from there, because the Jeph Loeb who did stuff like the Long Halloween,
mm,
that Superman run that I love, those Marvel color books you mentioned, even his earlier stuff like his work on Cable, his stuff
mm.
like that I really dug too. But it's not the same writer as the guy who then did Ultimates 3 and Red Hulk and all that other stuff,
Yeah,
which I just
yeah.
could not care for at all.
Mm. Yeah, he's always been a little bit hit or miss. He's done some like really random DC stuff. I don't know if you remember, there was a character called Loose Cannon. He wrote like a mini for. This is going back a ways, and the character didn't mean anything. It's not particularly. It's like kind of like a Hulk ripoff, but in DC format. Um, the story was okay. I did not know that his that he lost his son, but I can understand that that could change his writing style and his attitudes and his worldview. I mean, it's an incredible tragedy, right? So I can see, and for the fans, I can see that disconnect happening.
Yeah, but man, this stood out to me very well. And one of the things I love too about the dynamic that Loeb did was also the way he did the narration, because the
Mm,
narration is done, it's done internal monologues from both Superman and Batman's perspective, and both of them kind of commenting on each other and just like the different ways they view each other. And all of that
mm,
played really, really well in the comic book. And I've read it not that recently. It's been not as long as you, but it's been at least
mm.
like 2 or 3 years since I read it last, because I picked
Oh,
it up
oh,
digital when I was on sale one time.
okay.
And so yeah, it's somewhat recent in my mind, but not super recent.
So can I mention something about that interplay that you talk about between Superman and Batman? So there's, if you see Instagram reels and things like that about comic book characters, I feel like I've seen a lot of scenes from this movie and also from that comic book series commenting on each other between Superman and Batman. And then recently, more recent comics like Tom Taylor and Tom King have written some comics that people cite a lot, especially Double Date, where Batman and Superman go on a double date with their respective
With Lois and
significant
Catwoman, yeah.
others, Lois and Catwoman, and um really kind of summarizes their relationship, how they view each other, why they're friends, and people I think really connect to that aspect of those characters because they love those characters. I mean, we love these guys and we want them to be friends, even though they're really different. We see how that relationship can function, how that relationship can work.
Yeah, and I think one of the tragedies of Dark Knight Returns, and I think one of the wrong lessons people took from it, is that Batman and Superman don't get along.
Yeah.
And and even in that story, that's not the case. Like you go back to read that story and you realize it's just that they have circumstances have pushed them to opposite ends in this
Mm-hmm.
case. Like in Superman's case, he's basically been broken down, right? And he doesn't really they had this whole thing where the government was coming after them and all of that, and he was trying to keep things together and he was trying to maintain faith, and in doing so, in trying to play ball, he basically ends up becoming kind of a puppet figure. Whereas Batman, he was forced into retirement and now he's just, a bitter old man about the whole thing, and they come to blows about it. But that's not, and that's the end of their relationship. That's not how their relationship was defined. And I don't think we need to go back to, the Silver Age when they were completely buddy best friends with each other and they agree on everything. But I think there's a balance that between those two extremes. And I think that Loeb is one of the people who handle it really well. Also Tom King, like Double Date, I think that is probably my favorite issue of his run. I know his run gets criticized a lot, but I will defend Double Date. I think that is an excellent issue that really shows is a really good take on the two characters and how their dynamic works. But also, they've had like I think Joe Kelly had a little bit of stuff with them together in his run as well. You mentioned Tom Taylor. I mean, the whole breakdown of their relationship in the Injustice series that drove a lot. That was the most interesting part about that series and what is otherwise. And if not for that dynamic between those two characters, I don't think that story would have been as good as it was, because it's just basically at the end of the day, it's an evil Superman story, which, we're all kind of tired of hearing about anyway. And I think that they need to, when writers can find that good way of showing this interplay and showing that they do really respect each other, they do get along with each other, they do like and trust each other, all of that is great. And when they can play that off, but they're still different, right? So understanding that dynamic between the two is really the key to that relationship.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and I it's funny that you're talking about Dark Knight Returns. Like, obviously nowadays you're always getting into fights with your friends about politics, right? Like, and I actually, watching this movie reminded me a lot of what we're living through right now. So I think that'll be super interesting, and it's nice to see them kind of be friends. I think that's what a lot of fans want to see, and we got a taste of that in Justice League Unlimited, Batman Superman Adventures. We saw some of those things, and it's a lot of fun. And especially in a time period of shared universes, I think that's something that people really, the fandom, enjoys and really wants. And I think stories like Dark Knight Returns, where they're in opposition to each other, can work too. But I don't think the appetite is quite there for it as much as it was.
Yeah, I think we've seen so much of that, and probably culminating with Batman v Superman, that I think at this point everyone's like, okay, we've seen it, we've done it, let's move on to something else now. So I think wanting to see these two get along a little bit more, and we got a little bit of a taste of it with Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck, but unfortunately there just wasn't enough space to devote to it, and I would have liked to see them develop a relationship. I'm really curious to see who they end up getting to play Batman in the DCU, because whoever it is, I'm really interested to seeing them play off Corn Sweat.
Yeah, do you have anybody that you want them to cast?
Not really. I mean, okay, there's no one particularly that jumps out into mind. I think the best case would be someone that I probably don't know very well, and would probably be a dark horse. But there was I saw this movie, Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, speaking of Henry Cavill, which he was in that, and there's one actor in there I can't remember who his name was, but he struck me as very much kind of a Bruce Wayne type, and I think he could do a good job with it.
Is it the big guy, Alan Ritchson, the guy who plays?
No, it's not Alan Ritchson. No. I know he's wanted to play that, and but he was not who I was thinking of. It's someone else, one of the British guys in it.
Oh, okay.
I think Alex Pettyfer, that's who it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He played Appleyard in that, and something about his performance, I really kind of dug it, and I feel like this guy could probably do a pretty good job as Bruce Wayne. You know what I want to see Alan Rich in it is, if they ever do Absolute Batman, I think he'd be a shoo-in for that.
Yeah,
just
I mean, he's built like a unit. Yeah,
but also what I want to see is do a Wolfenstein movie and have him play BJ, like that, he's perfect.
Yeah.
I've been playing those games lately, and I'm just like this. And someone mentioned that on Reddit. I'm like, oh my god, that is obviously who else would you get for that?
That's perfect.
But also you mentioned Justice League Unlimited, and
Mhm.
this works kind of as a pseudo sequel to Justice League Unlimited in some ways. It's a different art style, but first off, you've got Conroy back as Batman. Like it was George Newbern in Superman in Justice League Unlimited, but they got Tim Daly to come back to play Superman, who played it in the animated series. You
Mhm.
also have Clancy Brown back as Lex Luthor. CCH Pounder is playing Amanda Waller. She also played it in Justice League Unlimited. So you have these returning voices coming back. And one of the things Luthor was starting to pursue was an idea of running for president
Mhm.
in that last season. So you can see some connective tissue there. And I think it's one of those things where if you kind of squint, this does seem like it could be a sequel to Justice League Unlimited.
Yeah, and out of the voice actors that we've talked about, Tim Daly is actually my favorite Superman voice actor. Not to say that I don't like George Newbern. I think he's pretty good in Justice League Unlimited, but I've always felt that Tim Daly brought something to that character that the other Superman voice actors just haven't been able to do. And I've often felt that if he'd had the shot to play the character in live action, I think he would have been really good. Just because he has the authority in his voice, but also this warmth that I think a lot of the actors that play Superman in animated, at least, they don't really pull off in the same way. If you think back to that episode where he invites Martian Manhunter, back to his home, and
But that episode was
you
Newbern,
know,
I think, wasn't it?
that episode is New Bern, but I'm imagining
Oh, okay,
Tim
okay. I'm
Daly,
sorry.
and I think it would really pop with Tim Daly. It works very well with New Bern, but there's something about the Daly performance that I really enjoyed, especially the way the interplay that he had with like Lois. There's a lot of jokes in Superman TAS. There's an episode where he battles Mxyzptlk, and it's great. He just has this comic timing. He has this sense that I really like, and the interplay I think between him and Conroy in this movie, it really pops. I think it really works. I mentioned earlier that people like sharing clips from this movie, especially conversations, like little snippets of their conversation from between Batman and Superman, from Kevin Conroy to Tim Daly. I think it really works, and I think that's really what drives most of the film.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny too in the opening segment when they're showing recapping like Luther's run for the presidency, and they
Mm.
show the kind of this stuck out to me, just a little funny aside. The kind of Jon Stewart knockoff guy who's on
Mm.
the Weekly Show, and now
Yeah.
Jon Stewart actually does a podcast called The Weekly Show.
Well, there's a
um,
lot of parallels to our like current moment. I just feel like because Luthor is, a president of questionable morals, and we might have something like that now. There's a lot of people that are like willing to follow him, even though he's doing some questionable things. He attacks famous people, in the sense of Superman. So I was getting a lot of like, wow, this is weirdly of the moment vibes as I was rewatching the movie.
well, even in that recap, right? The economic insecurities that they're playing up, conflicts abroad, and that kind of stuff. And then
Yep.
you've got this guy who's coming in. He's got this weird sort of charisma despite his questionable past. I mean, I will say though, having revisited part of the Loeb Kelly era when Luther was president, honestly, I think Luther would have been a much better president than what we've got now because he actually does have some moral ground that he stands on at times, and he actually does. He divested from his businesses. There's
He,
that
he
thing too.
probably released his tax returns,
He probably
so
did. Yeah, I mean, he was
probably did.
actually. And I think, and that was one of the things that I remember in an interview, Loeb actually said that he was interested in doing. The idea is like, well, no, we're gonna have him be he's gonna be president, but he's gonna do a good job. Like, so that's
Mhm.
a because and that poses an interesting moral
Mhm.
conundrum. And if you go back and you read Our Worlds at War,
Mhm.
there's some he does some questionable stuff in there within the fog, but
Mhm.
it's very much within the fog of war type of situation.
Mhm.
And there is a question as to like how much he knows about certain things, but
Mhm.
also there's some really humanizing moments there. Like there's some moments with him. He could easily just say like, I'm going to do all this on my own. I'm going to try and go after Superman, but he doesn't.
Mhm.
And there's this one scene when Lois's father dies, and he actually comforts Lois. And Lois is
Mhm.
like, why wasn't Superman here? And instead of saying like, yeah, Superman should have been here, he actually comforts her, and he said something like, if he could have been here, I know if he could have been here, he would have been. And so I'm
Mhm.
like, oh my God, this is like the most human I've ever seen Lex Luthor before,
Mhm.
other than Michael Rosenbaum on Smallville. But um,
Mhm.
so I thought all that stuff was really interesting. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, one of my criticisms to this day about this original story is the fact that Luthor goes so far off the deep end in this story.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when you're watching this in isolation, it's very easy to make those parallels with Trump. But when you look at it within the context of what was happening in the comics, it really feels like a left turn.
Mhm.
Before we jump too much more into that, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and talk more about this movie.
Blast off into a new universe with Corsairs, a new sci-fi space opera serial by me, Percival Constantine. In these adventures, join the crew of the Corsair, a group of intergalactic mercenaries, as they struggle to survive in the depths of corporate-controlled space. If you're a fan of Firefly, Cowboy Bebop, or Guardians of the Galaxy, then you're going to love Corsairs. Subscribers to my Patreon get 2 new episodes a week, while free members get 1 new episode a week starting in December. Patreon offers new subscribers a 7-day free trial, but I'm also throwing in another perk. If you sign up with the coupon code SCP, you'll get 90% off your first month. So visit patreon.com/Percival Constantine and join in the adventures. We all love superhero movies and TV shows, but what about the comics that inspired them? Marvel, DC, Image, and more have provided the template for the movies and shows we all enjoy watching, and it's important to honor that tradition by buying and reading comic books. Superhero Cinephiles is proud to be an affiliate of mycomicshop.com. It began as a small mail-order business operated by junior high school student Buddy Saunders all the way back in 1960, and has been operating on the internet since 1997. My Comic Shop has new releases, value packs, back issues, trade paperbacks, comic art, regular auctions, and a whole lot more, including 35% discounts on pre-orders. You can also sell your own comics or utilize their consignment services. You can even create your own want list of comics you're searching for. To get started, check out our affiliate link in the show notes or on the superherocinephiles.com homepage.
And we are back, still talking about Superman, Batman, Public Enemies. So we're talking about Luthor and his presidency. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about that aspect of it and real world parallels?
Well, I think there's some elements of like Captain Atom and some of the superheroes being conflicted. Like they want to follow the law, and one of the real world parallels that we're seeing is, are civil servants going to follow the law? Are they going to follow these orders? Are these orders even legal? And the way that the current administration is running things, you can see that there are parallels to the way Luthor might have run things. He might issue a ton of executive orders, right? And there might be all sorts of questionable reasoning around like, oh, can we actually do this? I think it's also like a big part of it is, people with conviction, kind of being seen as in a negative light. And kind of somebody like Luthor who has his own agenda all the time, is always playing some sort of game that may or may not support the country or may not support the goals that you expect. I think that really matters. And in the movie, they talk about that. I mean, it's the implication in every fight. And there's a lot of fights in this movie. When I was rewatching it, I was like, man, every like 5 to 7 minutes, there's another fight, and it's not small fights either. It's not like random goon. It's like Superman versus Captain Marvel, Superman versus Metallo. It's every big battle that you can imagine they're having like every few minutes. That's not what's happening in the current administration, but there are big fights that are happening in among politicians and among everyday people. And some of the you mentioned earlier, some of the economic stressors are very relevant now. right? Thinking about like there's one shot in the movie where they show like lima beans are like $10 a can, and I'm like, that's not too far off from what we're experiencing right now.
Yeah, it's funny to think that this came out in 2009.
Yeah.
And they're probably pulling off some real world parallels back then because we're coming on the end of the Bush administration at that point. Uh, Another thing too is the one line, the exchange between Batman and Power Girl when she's talking about, now that you've had a chance to interact with Luthor up close, what do you think of him? And when she just says he makes my skin crawl, and that just like that whole idea of, well, I'm trying to serve the country, I'm trying to do the right thing, but at the same time, this guy is just really skeeves me out. Is
Yeah.
That was another parallel that jumped out at me too.
Mhm.
But also you have that whole thing about pardoning criminals, right? He talks about Metallo and how he gave Metallo a pardon and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
You have Major Force, at committing murder on behalf of the president, which we're seeing that now in South America. So all this kind of stuff is happening, and yeah, divorced of almost 20 years, it's shocking how relevant this stuff is right now.
Absolutely. And it's also it's also just, I don't know, it made the movie, rewatching it made it a little bit more interesting for me. I was like, wow, this is has some things on its mind other than how hard can Superman punch Major Force.
Mhm. Another thing too, now on the fight thing, I feel like they overdid it a little bit, and I know they're trying to stick close to the source material, and there were a lot of fights in that, but that was also a 6-issue story arc, and this is just clocks in at a little over 60 minutes. So I feel like we could have done without some of the fights or made some of them pull back on some of them so that we could focus more on some of the character dynamics that really I think make are the most interesting parts of it. And like you said, those are the kinds of things that you see people sharing a lot these days.
Oh, absolutely. And I actually think there must be a version of this that's longer, because it feels like this version is like cut to the bone. Because if I didn't know the characters, like if I didn't know who Black Lightning or Starfire are, and they pop up in this movie, if I just like, was like a random regular person, put this on, and I'd be like, who is that? Who's Black Lightning? Who's Starfire? Some of them, Starfire doesn't even get named, right? Like there's a scene where they're fighting Captain Atom, Major Force, and like some of the folks that are a part of that unit. Katana, for example, right? Like they don't even name her. You could have just thought, oh, she's a random samurai, and Batman's just there to beat her. They have like Lady Shiva and Mongol just pop up for like one fight scene while they're being controlled by Gorilla Grodd, and it's just like it's just an insane number of characters that if I wasn't aware of the DC universe, I'd be like, what is happening here? Who are these guys? Why are we fighting all of them? But as a fan of the comics, it's a lot of fun to see it. But I think there's a version where they probably have like interstitial dialogue where they explain who the characters are, who the people are, and probably establish everybody a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I agree with that totally. And on the choice of some of these villains that they're not villains, but the heroes they had in there as well. Um, Something with that caught me off guard is the fact that Power Girl feels not like Power Girl in this. Like I'm not super familiar with her character, but from what I understand, she's very confident, she's very kind of brash, whereas this version of Power Girl feels much more restrained, like she feels much more like Supergirl and much more like a younger Supergirl than she does feel like Power Girl.
Yeah, I was gonna say she feels like she's just starting out, and she's wearing a very, I don't know how else to describe it, a very sexualized costume. And the character in the comics, from what I remember, it has a greater ownership of that sexuality, and it doesn't seem like that, especially when they finally meet Toyman. And they have that whole thing with the X-ray glasses, and she gets mad about it. So she feels like they made her younger, but I think they wanted to highlight that discomfort that the that the heroes are feeling working for Luthor. And then I think they also wanted somebody who could presumably be a bridge between Batman and Superman and the other heroes. Because she does that with Captain Marvel, she does that with Hawkman, near the end of the movie.
Yeah, and that was part of the reason why I think she was in there in the original, and I just double checked. So I was wondering about Black Lightning because he was part of Luthor's cabinet in the comics.
Wow.
So then I went back and I just flipped really quickly into the trade, and yeah, he's all of them are that appear in the movie are also in the comic, with the exception of John Stewart Green Lantern. He's also in the comic book, but he doesn't appear here at all. And also they have the whole Batman family and Superman family. They show up too at one point as well. And I think, and one of the things that as I was just quickly flipping through the book, there was one part where she talks about Hawkman and Captain Marvel, and she talks about how they're my teammates in the JSA. So that kind of idea of like the bridge between them, that's probably another reason why she was chosen for this. But I feel like for this movie, I think they may have been better off. Well, I guess they couldn't have, because they were going to be doing Supergirl. If they had the idea of doing a sequel, the Supergirl one would have been coming next. So that's why they couldn't have her in there. But yeah, it just feels a little bit off for Power Girl to be this kind of naive and almost like, I hesitate to use the word mousy, but not quite that extreme, but in that area, in that direction. If
She's
you know
definitely
what I'm saying.
like demure, right? She's definitely like very,
that's a good
very
word. Yeah.
quiet, like kind of like coming into her own in a way. And it does kind of clash with the, at least if you're not familiar with the comics and you just see her in this movie and she's dressed in this way, you might think that maybe she should be, the way that she's played, she's closer to like Starlight on The Boys, right? Like somebody who's younger, who came from more conservative background. So I would expect her to be dressed a little bit differently and kind of presenting herself differently. And so there's this clash in the way they've decided to present her versus how we think of her in the comics and how she actually is.
Also, Captain Marvel in this, Shazam, for people who only know him from the movies or from more recent comics. But yes, he was originally Captain Marvel. It's a whole trademark dispute thing, and DC just finally decided to, even though DC could still technically call him Captain Marvel within the stuff, they decided to just not do it at all and just not have to deal with it. But and I don't know, this might be from the comics. So I'm not as familiar with Captain Marvel in the comics at this time. My understanding is even at this point, he was still very much more of like kind of a big situation where he's very much still like he's an adult body, but he still has kind of the mentality of a kid. Whereas here he comes off very much like a seasoned, confident adult. And I don't know, I felt like it made him more generic that way.
Yeah, I think there's, I think they have to strike a balance between setting aside time to like make him a kid. But I think the voice acting, and I think it helps that I know Shazam a little bit, is the voice acting kind of sold it for me that he is a kid playing confidence. He's a kid playing like this bigger version of himself, which we don't usually see. Usually it's like this, oh golly, gee whiz, I'm a little kid in a big body type thing. But I think he's actually a little older than he normally is in this. I feel like he's maybe 11 or 12 versus like being 9 or 10, which is what he often is in the comics. I think he's a little bit older. And the reason I think that is because they show him when he transforms back into Billy Batson, he's got this big cut on his face, and he looks a little bit taller than usual. Maybe I'm reading into it, but he also shows this like creativity in terms of the use of his powers, right? He waits until Batman comes near him, wakes him up, and says, "Hey, Shazam, boom, I'm back." And I think one of the things that I did like about the portrayal here is I've always felt that Superman is very weak in front of magic. And so him fighting Shazam, well, it's cool to see, from just a power set basis, he should have a bigger and more difficult time with Shazam. If you've seen any of the other adaptations, there's one Black Adam adaptation. I can't remember the name of it now. It's like a Justice League.
Oh, it's like
Black
Superman,
Adam.
Shazam, Black Adam.
Superman
I think.
Shazam. Yeah, that's right. And
I haven't seen it,
Superman's
but I just remember the title.
Yeah, I remember watching it going like Superman's like really giving it to Shazam and Black Adam. I don't think that he can go at this level with those guys because magic rules are problematic for him and really difficult. And so to see Shazam kind of, take it to Superman, I think made a lot of sense for me. And it also upped the stakes, right? Like there's this escalation. It's kind of funny that you start the first fight is like Metallo Superman, and then the escalation is up to Shazam and Superman. So I think there's an interesting look at the powers and the power set in among those characters.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue too is just also the short runtime. So by the time we get to that Superman Shazam fight or the Batman Hawkman fight, we've gone through so much already that now we're getting to the point where we have to kind of speed things up a little bit. So it feels like those are a little bit rushed, especially with the way and I get we're supposed to know that it's supposed to be a fake out, right? That they got the upper hand and now they're posing as Captain Marvel and Hawkman. But even still, it does feel kind of like an abrupt cutoff because I did find myself wondering, well, wait, how do they get out of that situation then?
Yeah. They kind of hand wave it away and they're like, oh, Power Girl, thank you for helping us figure out things with Hawkman and Shazam off screen. Right. That was I think that was the main point. But I think that goes back to the short runtime again. I don't know if there's any behind the scenes stuff about this, but I'm shocked that it's 67 minutes. Like they could have gone easily for a 90-minute movie and they would have covered everything and it would feel a little bit different. And I really like this movie a lot. But I wouldn't mind an extra 20 minutes, to kind of let it breathe.
And this is consistently one of my biggest complaints about these direct-to-video animated features is that, and I know at one point, I think the idea was that they had to be like, they had like a hard 75-minute cutoff because the whole idea was they're cutting this up to be shown on like, 2-hour blocks on Cartoon Network or something like that. So I get that, but even now they still doing that and doesn't feel like they have to anymore. I mean, at least now they started to realize, we can do multi-part ones. So like the Crisis one was 3 parts. Whether it had to be 3 parts is a different story, but we talked about that already. Like the Dark Knight Returns, that was 2 parts and it was very well served by that. Same thing with the Death and Return of Superman ones. And I feel like this is also one that could have, and even this is even shorter than 75 minutes. Most of them clock in around like 70, 75 minutes. This is 67. And also just as a, talking about the characters, I'm looking on IMDb and the total number of characters that show up to fight Superman and Batman within this 1 hour block is 28. And that's not even counting the heroes. And that's not even counting the heroes. That's not counting Captain Atom and his crew or 28 characters.
So you're talking maybe 40 characters altogether fought these 2 dudes. Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild because wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I think it's a little bit too much. Although interesting trivia, it looks like Pamela Anderson was considered to be Power Girl in this too.
Okay. Who plays Power Girl in the movie?
So this is this is where it gets a little bit this is where we're getting a little bit sketchy territory, but it's Allison Mack.
So we're supposed to join the cult at the end of the movie. Okay.
So I think they edited out the Nexium ad. But yeah, it was that was another thing too. I think Allison Mack and the cult stuff, Nexium stuff aside, like I just don't think she's a good fit for Power Girl at all.
Yeah, there's definitely more interesting actresses that could have lent their voices to that character to make things pop. Tara Strong, or even if you don't want to go with like a seasoned voice actress, you can find someone who I think could pull it off.
Tara Strong would have been an excellent choice and a nice carry on because she did Supergirl, didn't she, in the animated series?
I think she might. Yeah, if I recall correctly, she did.
So that would have been a nice kind of another connective tissue with this, but also too, like the guy who does Captain Atom, so Xander Berkeley did him and voiced him in this, and I'm trying to look up who played him in Justice League Unlimited, but I thought the guy who did him in Justice League Unlimited was um so George Eads, I think it's and he had
Oh
like kind
yeah,
of a
yeah, yeah.
and I thought he did a really excellent job in
Uh,
that.
yeah, he's great. And I mentioned earlier that there's a thing that bruised between Superman and Captain Atom. I remember that Justice League Unlimited fight where Superman just takes Captain Atom apart.
Mhm.
And if you're watching this, you get to see him wail on Captain Atom a little bit as well. And it's kind of funny that it's become this rivalry that even pops up in DCKO. So in I don't know if it's the most recent issue of DCKO, but there one of the fights is Superman Captain Atom, and it's a lot of fun. Um, like DCKO, they get some special abilities. They can transform themselves into different versions from the multiverse, like different versions of themselves. And it's really fun to see these two characters like take on different characteristics from different versions of themselves and then battle it out. I know the issue got a little bit of criticism because they didn't get to use like the gifts that they got from the Omega beams or whatever, but I thought the issue was a lot of fun. Maybe I just like watching Captain Atom get beat by Superman. Maybe that's what I really like. But I
Maybe that's your
enjoyed,
kink.
yeah, maybe that's
Hey, no shaming over here.
worse fetishes exist.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, here's something interesting. Apparently the Gotham Gazette and the opening credits, they showed Lex Luthor, the name of Luthor's vice president, um, who's Maz Yezpidalik, which removing all the vowels gets you
Yep,
Mixes Pidalik.
that's funny.
Yeah.
That's great.
One other thing I thought was interesting too was they removed the explicit reference to Venom, because that was the whole thing about Luthor's whole cocktail,
Hmm.
was it was this liquid kryptonite mixed with the Venom drug,
Hmm.
and that's what he was taking. Here they removed the reference to Venom. They just call it like a steroid. I thought that was a
But
curious
Bane is
omission.
in the movie. Bane's in the movie. He pops up for a
That's
second.
right. Yes.
Batman
Yeah.
takes him out with like 4 kicks, but he's being controlled by Gorilla Grodd.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why Batman beats Shiva. That's why he beats all of these other characters because Grodd isn't that good at fighting.
Yeah, that was disappointing even in the original story, because it's like you have even Mongol there. It's like this guy was powerful enough to take on Superman by himself, but
Yep,
now it's just like he's just another drone. So
yep.
that was kind of that was one of the things I think Loeb was. I think it was just like he asked Ed McGuinness, like, who do you want to draw? And Ed McGuinness just gave him like a long list of characters. And he's like, all right, let's just throw them all in.
That's
But
funny.
also we get CCH Pounder as Amanda Waller coming back, and
Yep.
amazing choice for the character. And she could have done it in live action too, like she totally
I
looks
agree.
like the part as well. In
I
fact,
agree.
even before I had watched Justice League Unlimited, when I saw the Shield, and I
Yep.
saw her on the Shield the first time, I'm like, oh, that's Amanda Waller.
She's very good. I would have loved to have her cast as live action Amanda Waller. I do love Viola Davis.
She is
But
amazing,
CCH
yes.
Pounder, yeah, CCH Pounder would also be terrific. In any Waller related, they could put her back as a voice actress for any other adaptation, and it would still be fun. It would still be really
Hmm.
cool. I think she gets a little bit of a short shrift in this movie just because there's not
I was
enough
about to mention,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, there's just not enough time for her to really deliver. Um, but any of the character turns that happen, they happen so fast and they happen so quickly. It's like, oh, we were here like literally like 10 minutes ago, but now we're here. She was ready to serve Luthor, or something bad happens. Okay, we've turned against him, and now we're looking to Batman and Superman to save us. Here's what you need. Go get it. Um, and it's kind of like whiplash inducing a little bit where you're like, whoa, when did this happen?
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's comics.
Yeah, well, also with the Amanda Waller thing too, and this happened in the comic too. So it's not, it's this is the kind of thing that you should probably, you know, take out of the script when you're working on the adaptation. But the whole thing when like Luther gets like really creepy on her and he like kisses her and stuff like that, that's in the comic too. And just like having just gone through a reread of the Ostrander Suicide Squad,
Mm.
the Amanda Waller that John Ostrander created would have smacked the shit out of Luthor for that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sexual harassment Luthor, who's also president, that tracks.
And I get
So,
more parallels. Yeah.
yes.
All right. Anyone? Oh, also we had John C. McGinley playing Metallo in here. Although I didn't even pick up on his voice, and usually I'm able to pick out his voice in a lineup, but this time I just didn't. I didn't catch it.
No Dr. Coxisms at all in this.
No, no, not at all.
No?
But yeah, overall, it's a fun movie, and I think it's definitely one of the better ones of these adaptations. I do like that they tried to mimic the. Well, I mean, I'm of a mixed opinion on the mimicking the McGuinness art style. On the one hand, I love seeing his art in the comics, and he's a very expressive artist. Like again, going back through Our Worlds at War, there's some really not only just like great action scenes, which obviously he does those very well, but just like some
Mhm.
really powerful emotional stuff he brought to the
Yeah.
table in that arc. But I think sometimes here in this story, it in live action, I think it just accentuates the fact that everyone looks like they're on steroids.
Yeah, I want to mention a couple of things about the McGuinness art style here. Number one, I think the Waller design is bad.
Yeah.
I don't like the Waller design. That's like the worst one out of all of the characters. Um, there's definitely some attempts to make certain characters look the same. So Captain Atom, Major Force, they're meant to look the same so that you're, confused about who shows up to take out Metallo at one point. Right? There's a reason. And then there's also like the reason that they're both military guys. They both, we want to make that very, very explicit. Um, I think that the musculature on some of the characters is maybe too much. I would have liked seeing a bigger bodily difference between Batman and Superman, like making Batman a little thinner. He's leaning into that Dark Knight Returns look where he's like kind of boxy, kind of a big dude, in that way. I also think that like the art style has these moments, and I do wonder if the production was maybe rushed because there's some sequences where things look a little goofy. So when they were in Toyman's lair and they're trying to get to the rocket and Superman falls, that looks a little goofy. And there's another falling scene where they are in the graveyard and then they fall into towards the graveyard. The art just doesn't pop the same way. There's certain sequences where I know that they're putting in all the effort. There are others where I felt like, okay, maybe they shortchanged them a little bit on this.
Yeah, I felt Power Girl too. There are parts of her like her legs seem kind of asymmetrical from like the torso, so they kind of like jutted out a little bit. So it felt like the the bottom part of her costume was like squeezing her legs too tightly. It was a really kind of a weird little thing that I picked up on there. Um, yeah, I mean, I like the effort, and I actually do wish we would see more of this kind of stuff from Warner Brothers Animation, trying to go back and adapt some of these comic book stories and trying to, approximate at least the art style that was used in them. I think that's a really cool idea, and it's much preferable because we've already got the live action stuff doing the shared universe, so there's no reason we have to keep doing it in animation as well. I mean, animation now is this place where you can just let the reins off a little bit and go a little nuts with some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think trying to either mimic the art style or kind of approximate it or make a version of it that is fun in the animation. I was reading some reviews and people seem to have some issues with the animation style in this movie in particular, more so than some of the others. But I don't think it's that much different. I just think that if you don't like the Ed McGuinness style animated, then it might cause you some agita when you're watching it.
Yeah, I think so. How would you rank this and kind of among the animated films that you've seen so far?
It's in the top half. I think I think the story is a little too thin, or at least there's not enough time. Like I can identify a lot of the emotions that they're trying to go for, and especially if they carried over more of that like the beginning of the movie really has a lot of that snappy banter between Batman and Superman, and by the end of the movie, there's just not enough time because you got to get through the plot to have that kind of banter. But the emotion at the end, where when Superman comes and gets Batman out of space, that I think is valuable, and I think they do a really good job of it. I like it more than some of the other adaptations, but I don't think it's in my top like 5 or top 10.
Yeah, I think I'd probably say the same. I don't know if I'd have a specific ranking, but it would definitely be in the upper half. And for the exact same reasons you said, like it does have some great action. I mean, the performances by Daly and Conroy are great, and it's just like I wish we got to see a little bit more of that and a little bit less of the punchy run.
Yeah, I also, I'm a big fan of some of the other like more alternative kind of animation that they've done. Like I really like Batman Ninja. I really like Batman Soul of the Dragon.
Soul of the Dragon I dug.
Yeah, that movie is so much fun. I like Bat Fam and I like Merry Little Batman. Those are like really kind of fun, different takes on the characters. So I enjoyed all of those. So, those are definitely like higher rated than this, but I think this is like a fun way to spend 70 minutes or so.
Yeah. Again, not definitely on the shorter end of these. So, which, again, could have done with some extra runtime here. But okay, it's a good note to end on. So, Sai, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
So right now I'm on Blue Sky, IO Islam, on Blue Sky. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on my Amazon author page if you're so inclined. Those best ways to get in touch with me or to see what I'm posting about, talking about. And I hope everybody gets a chance to, check out some of my books, Leaders Assemble, Leadership in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Elements of Leadership Lessons from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Would be, happy to, talk about any of those topics in the future. And, we're working on some other comic book related academic research. So we'll see what comes up.
Awesome. Cool. We'll definitely keep us posted about those things. As for us, superherocinephiles.com is the website, Super Cinema Pod on Instagram and Threads, although mostly you can find me over at Blue Sky, which is also superherocinephiles.com. And also my Patreon or my Substack. You can check out the serial work I'm doing over there. So check those out. Links will be in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. Superhero Cinephiles is produced by me, Percival Constantine. The show is created by myself and the late, great Derek Ferguson, our host emeritus. Visit us on the web at superherocinephiles.com to listen to past episodes or find out how you can be a guest yourself. Support the show by visiting our advertiser links or click the Buy Me a Coffee link on the website to make a one-time donation. We are Super Cinema Pod on both Instagram and Blue Sky, so please be sure to follow us. We'd also appreciate it if you could rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and share us with your friends.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.